Please welcome back to the stage our moderator, Miles O'Brien.
All right, welcome back. Welcome back from the break. The NAE Grand Challenges is more than a national call to slide rules, if you will. It has become a force in education as well. There are two Grand Challenge education initiatives, the GC Scholars Program that reaches out to the humanities and business programs as well as the engineering schools. And the Grand Challenges also are working on reaching students a little sooner with a K through 12 outreach effort. To tell us more about both programs, please welcome Duke University's William Monty Riechert. He is the chair of the Grand Challenges Scholars Program Steering Committee, and Martha Absher. She is the Associate Dean of Education and Outreach from the Duke University Pratt School of Engineering.
Thanks, Miles. I want to talk to you today about the Grand Challenge Scholars Program, which is something that we've been working on for the last couple of years. And a number of years ago, as you now well know, the National Academy of Engineering came up with the notion of developing the Grand Challenges for the challenges for the next century, and this was used to develop an educational program. And this can be sliced and diced in a number of different ways, but here's a good example of how these 14 Grand Challenges can be divided up into socially important areas of energy, environment, health, security, and learning and computation. And the trick is to try and figure out a way to effectively engage students. And so at the first National Summit in Durham, North Carolina, this idea of the Grand Challenge Scholars Program was introduced by the deans at the three institutions and President Richard Miller. And these were really the brain trust of this idea. This is a picture of the Olin campus, their main area in the center of the campus. It's a lovely campus. And what the idea was to introduce these 5 particular areas that students would engage in when they're looking at their Grand Challenge. And so area number 1 is the project and research activity that engages a Grand Challenge theme or a specific Grand Challenge. Area number 2, which is something related to what we heard about earlier, is that they have to incorporate an interdisciplinary curriculum such that it's not just an engineering background, but it engages learning and teaching from other areas. There has to be an entrepreneurship piece. Clearly we want to move these things from ideas to products at some point so that they can have some sort of impact. There has to be a global dimension piece such that they become aware of sort of the global issues associated with the Grand Challenges. And then there's also a service learning piece where they learn through the service to others and try and engage perhaps on a more personal level with issues either globally or domestically to get to know the people that may be experiencing this dilemma or people that are on the ground trying to solve these issues. And so the idea behind the Grand Challenge Scholars Program is to develop this national network of institutional Grand Challenge Scholar programs. In other words, each university or each engineering school develops its own program, and that these are tied together in a network type of fashion. I'll talk more about that in a minute. So the general idea is to try and generate roughly 2,000 Grand Challenge Scholars per year in graduating. So just to break it down simply, so roughly 100 institutions that are graduating roughly 200 students per year that are participating in this program. And so this is the general idea. And in order to do this, we have a Grand Challenge Steering Committee that consists of USC's Louise Yates, Olin's Lynn Stein, Dean Martha Absher from Duke University, and our most recent addition is Jenna Carpenter who's Associate Dean at Louisiana Tech. And the role of this steering committee is to solicit applications from different institutions and to review these applications and then provide feedback through an iterative mechanism to try and generate a program that is suitable for designation as a Grand Challenge Scholars Program. And students that graduate from this program get National Academy of Engineering Grand Challenge Scholars on their transcript. So this is indeed a distinction. And one of the main ways that we advertise this and keep track of this is the Grand Challenge Scholars website, which is administered by Pratt. And so through this mechanism, we invite schools to join this national network. We contact engineering deans and obtain contact information. We ask them to join what's called an update list. So if you go on to grandchallengescholars.org and click on Join Grand Challenge Scholars Program, a page pops up and you put in your contact information. When the contact information is submitted, that automatically sends you an application to apply for one of these programs. And in addition to receiving instructions, we also use this as sort of an oversight thing, oversight mechanism. We recently had an NSF workshop at Olin to look at trying to develop and broaden these programs to other institutions. So in addition to the 5 essential areas that the curriculum has to consist of, the steering committee has felt that there are 4 essential areas that are necessary for one of these programs to consist. And so there has to be a selection and assessment piece. So how do you identify your scholars? How are these scholars' progress assessed? How do you determine whether or not they've actually completed their portfolio? And so on. So that has to be built in. Of course, the 5-part Grand Challenge curriculum, which I mentioned earlier, we like to promote program connectivity such that people aren't doing portfolios that consist of 4 or 5 distinct areas, but we actually try and weave these things together or encourage people to weave things together, similar to what President Miller was talking about earlier with his Venn diagram, where these 3 pieces merge together. And another thing is that each program at each school is independently funded and operated. And then in addition to that, each individual institution gets to sort of figure out its own way that they want to try and fulfill these essential elements and these 5 pieces of this curriculum. So not every institution is the same. And I'll talk a little bit about the Duke system. So the Duke vision, it was as follows, was the idea of trying to foster meaningful undergraduate engagement with the Grand Challenges, provide a rigorous and programmatically achievable program. So it has to, that involves educational and practicum experiences. So you have to weave this together in a fashion that can be accomplished in within 4 years. Expose undergraduates to didactic and experiential learning beyond conventional engineering curriculum. That actually relates to the session this morning, that these students are expected to sort of stretch their comfort zone a little bit beyond being the virtuoso turbine designer, and make the program exciting and intellectually engaging. And there's a little quote here from Will Patrick, who is a member of our first class of Grand Challenge Scholars, and it just has to be more than getting NAE Grand Challenge Scholars on my transcript. So we sort of use that as kind of an example of where we are as a litmus test. This thing is supposed to advance. There we go. The way we do it, we introduce students in their freshman, sophomore year, tell them about the program. We bring them into the program in their junior year, and they initiate their Grand Challenge portfolio, and in their senior year they complete the Grand Challenge portfolio and they attend the summit. And I'm pleased to announce that this year's class is actually here. You guys want to stand up real quick? We're very proud of these students. And just a little list of our accomplishments so far. We've identified the leadership, Martha and me. We established a Grand Challenge steering committee on the campus. We've established roadmaps for students to reach these program milestones. It's very important that you think the roadmap through. We received program approval from Pratt. We got the registrar to approve it. We graduated our first class of Grand Challenge scholars last May, and the people that just stood up will be graduating in May 2011. And another point that I want to make is that when you put together your steering committee, make sure you engage people in the steering committee that are likely targets for the students when they are attempting to pursue their portfolio. So we have Engineering World Health, Engineering Without Borders, Duke Engage, in addition to the directors of undergraduate studies on the committee. So it's good, it's important that you do this. And also we have a student on the committee, and Anna Brown, who's also here, is our current student representative. And finally, I want to finish up with some of the accomplishments on the national level. We had this NSF workshop at Olin, and we brought in stakeholders to talk about the Grand Challenge Scholars Program. We had the Grand Challenge Scholars Program on the Engineering Dean's Council agenda. We defined roles in the national and regional Grand Challenge, and we're proposing, a pre-proposal has been submitted to try and develop umbrella funding, and that's Lynn Stein and Jenna Carpenter were primarily behind that. So this is where we are. We have 38 schools that are on our update list. The ones in red are the ones that actually have active programs currently. And if you look at this from the point of view of a national map, we're from Los Angeles to Boston and Toronto to Miami. And again, the ones in red are the active programs where they have students in the program. One in green at NC State is under review, and the ones in blue are, we still have to receive the official proposal from these guys. And as a final note, if this thing will advance, there we go. I'm completing my time as chair of the steering committee. Jenna Carpenter is going to be taking over after me. Here's a picture of Jenna looking very serious. Anyway, she's joining us from Louisiana Tech, and we look very much forward to her running the program. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Monty, and good morning to all of you. You've just heard about how we have the Grand Challenges working at the undergraduate level, and now we're going to tell you about how we are moving the Grand Challenges into the K-12 community. My colleague and the co-director of the program, Jerome Lavelle, was unable to be here today due to a scheduling conflict. He extends his strongest regrets. Jerome and everyone on our team is very committed to the development of this new program. It's called the Grand Challenges K-12 Partners Program, and it's a joint effort between NC State and Duke University. And here is our website. The Grand Challenges K-12 Partners Program evolved after we had our Grand Challenge Scholars Program off the ground and running nationwide. As NC State and Duke began to work on our regional summit in Raleigh in May 2010, engineering deans Louis Martin Vega of NC State and Tom Katsouleas of Duke got the idea to extend the Grand Challenges program down to the K-12 community. This would greatly broaden the impact of the Grand Challenges, and they created a team to develop the new program. Here is our K-12 Partners Program team. First from NC State is co-director Jerome Lavelle, along with Laura Bottomley and Liz Perry. Laura and Liz have made their career work in K-12 engineering education, and Liz is the chair-elect of the K-12 division of ASEE. On the Duke side, along with myself, is Gary Wabera, who directs our K to PhD program, and Nancy Shaw, who is the North Carolina director of Project Lead the Way, a nationwide pre-college engineering curriculum. As we began to work on the problem of creating our program, we knew that we had to make it flexible. We wanted to make sure that you could all integrate and leverage the programs you have in your own universities. And it was critical that we made it inclusive and not exclusive. At the undergraduate level, the Scholars Program can be very competitive. At the K-12 level, it was very important to us that Mrs. Smith's second grade class in a small rural school with very little equipment and not much funding will be able to get involved just as well as a larger group at a much better equipped site. This is important because in this program we're developing not only the researchers, engineers, and PhDs of the future, but the students who will serve the technological workforce, who will drive the legislative issues, and who will pursue the entrepreneurial and business efforts that will be necessary to truly address these grand challenges in their fullest aspect. To do this, we had to address those 5 components that Monty mentioned. If the 14 grand challenges are the framework or skeleton of how we solve these great engineering problems of the 21st century, the 5 components are the engine or the beating heart. They are what energize and drive those changes, and they combine realizing the level of need with a practical approach to making it obtainable, affordable, and doable on a global level. We had to translate these 5 components into a doable, clear format with simple terminology appropriate for the K-12 community. And what we came up with was the 5-part Make It Happen plan. The project or practicum component became Do It, defining what it is that you want to do. Interdisciplinary curriculum became Learn It. What are all the things and subjects that you have to learn to carry out your plan? The global component became Share It. Where might this make a difference and why? And explore that difference. The entrepreneurial component became Create It. Could you copy your idea in a more inexpensive way? And how would you do that? Test it and gather information. And the service component became Teach It. What do you learn when you build and test that changes what you do next? Evaluate those results and make changes, and then share what you have learned elsewhere as is appropriate for your group with other students, with another class, another organization, on the national website. Here, in a very simple format, is a 5-part Make It Happen plan for a solar oven. Do it. You want to cook with a solar oven. Learn it. You're going to have to explore things like capturing and converting solar energy, insulating, and learning about temperature change over time. Share it. Where might having a solar oven make a difference for people? Be more economical, or save time that they spend supervising food cooking so they can use it for something else important. Create it. How can you make it out of cheap and readily available materials? And what happens when you do that? Teach it. Gather your data, see what happened differently than what you expected, and figure out why and how you can improve it. And then share what you learned. These are some of the many resources and programs with which we are directly involved at NC State and Duke, and they are available for you to develop in your own programs. Resources such as Teach Engineering, which has made an enthusiastic national commitment to the Partners Program. And here on the right are some of the other wonderful resources you have available, such as JETS, which this year is using a Grand Challenge theme for their high school competition. These are resources that are standards-based, inquiry-based, project-based, and they will provide you with many suggestions and ideas and curricular components for you to use to develop your own program. How can you become a Grand Challenge K-12 partner if you're a teacher, a class, a group, a school, or a club? First, you link with our national office or with a regional partner site. You show an understanding of the Grand Challenges that is grade and age appropriate. You apply the 5-part Make It Happen plan using an interactive, hands-on approach and using our website and the many resources available. And then you share what you have learned with others at the local level on our website as is appropriate for you. How can you, as a College of Engineering, participate in the K-12 Partners Program? If you have an approved Grand Challenge Scholars Program, which Monty just discussed, you can become a regional partner site by deciding what geographic region you want to serve. That can be local, regional, or statewide, as is appropriate for your particular school, your particular programs, and your support in K-12. You host a regional conference. This can involve local students and teachers, administrators, educators, and K-12 engineering education experts. You develop and provide resources to your chosen community, and you link with the national office and website. We're very proud to announce that the K-12 Partners Program has its first regional site, Arizona State's Fulton School of Engineering. They're going to be hosting their regional conference on November 5th. Keynote speakers will be Drs. Jerome Lavelle and Laura Bottomley of NC State and the national office. And we want to congratulate Arizona State for leading the way with the regional sites. NC State and Duke will be holding a regional conference in spring 2011. We will be bringing hundreds of teachers and students from across the state to participate in hands-on activities in the 5-part Make It Happen plan, and we'll have special sessions for some of the programs with which we're very closely involved, like Project Lead the Way and Engineering is Elementary. We'll be inviting some of our Grand Challenge scholars from Duke and NC State to participate too. And Duke has made it a part of our Grand Challenge Scholars program that every scholar will produce an activity of the 5-part Make It Happen plan out of their particular project before they complete the program. Now our goal is to grow the Partners Program. We want to encourage you to contribute resources and activities to the national website, as well as links to relevant websites and programs from your own communities and campuses. We want you to join us as a regional partner site as soon as you have your Grand Challenge Scholars Program approved. We want you to recruit partners for the program. We presented it already to over 200 teachers. Or we want you, if you are a member of the K-12 community, to join us as a partner in the program and help us spread the message about the Grand Challenges and their vital role in 21st century engineering education. Thank you.
All right, that's a pretty good segue for our next panel, the education panel. It seems to me this panel may be potentially the most important of all because just about every challenge we face, every topic we've discussed here, technology, innovation, policy, communications, and business, has its roots somewhere in the failings of our education system, particularly at the K through 12 level. Kids are not pursuing the technical fields, and parents are not pushing them in that direction. By and large, schools are not delivering the kind of instruction that would engage and inspire kids to pursue the technical fields. It's no wonder when you ask young people what an engineer does, they quickly reply, drives the train. There's a lot of talk in Washington these days about changing this, but education in the U.S. is not nationally coordinated. It's run by local school boards, and of course there's the power of the teachers' unions. And we have created a system that frankly discourages creativity in curriculum and in the classroom in order to prepare kids for these standardized tests they have to take. It's really a Gordian knot, but engineers do like a challenge, I know. So let's see what kinds of solutions we can find today. It's my pleasure to introduce to you the education keynote speaker, the president of Harvey Mudd College, Dr. Maria Klawe.
Thank you. It's really a pleasure to be with you this morning. And I'm going to be talking to you about challenges and opportunities in STEM education all the way from kindergarten up through undergraduate education. Now, I think everybody knows that the challenges facing education in the United States are really very complex. And so I'm going to talk about three of the challenges. And I've picked the three that I think we could actually make real progress on within, let's say, the next 5 to 10 years. And none of them are going to be easy to change, but I think if we were able to make significant changes, things would improve. So, number one, teachers. Number two, underrepresented groups in STEM education. And number three, the American culture. Okay, I realize that it is a little bit ambitious to be talking about changing the American culture, but I just want those of you who are, let's say, at least 40 years old, and I can't see my audience, so I don't know what percentage falls into that category, but those of you who are old enough to think about how common it was to see smoking. And it's almost disappeared in much of American culture. And I figure if we can stop smoking, we can start learning to love mathematics. So let me talk about teachers. The issues that affect the teaching of math and science differ between elementary school and then middle school and high school and then finally at the undergraduate level. So up through elementary school, I really believe the primary issue is that a lot of our elementary school teachers did not particularly enjoy mathematics when they were learning it themselves, and they don't have a lot of confidence in their ability to teach math. Now, as somebody who's a mathematician and a computer scientist by profession, I cannot tell you how many times I have sat on a plane sitting beside someone, maybe I'm working on a math problem. Yes, I do like to do that. And so the person next to me says, "What are you doing? It looks like math." And I say, "Yeah, I'm a mathematician." And they say almost invariably, "I was never any good at math." And somehow in our world, that's an okay thing to feel, and it's okay. It's something our parents say, but it's also something our elementary school teachers seem to feel okay about not really liking math. When we get to middle school and high school, there are really two things that are happening. People who are good at math and science and would have the kinds of people and organizational skills, communication skills that would make them excellent teachers, they have many other opportunities that will pay more, have more stature in our society, and be less stressful and less challenging, frankly, than being a teacher at these levels. And then it's also the case, as I think probably most of you know, that about half of our math and science teachers who are teaching high school quit in their first 3 years. And a lot of that is because they're just not receiving the mentoring and support and professional development that they would need to actually become very effective high school teachers. When I get to college, it's really all about the fact that both in large public universities and elite private universities, except for small liberal arts colleges, teaching is much less valued than research. And even in liberal arts colleges, the emphasis on research has been increasing. And, I have to say that when I think about, and, I really value STEM research, it's very important. It's important to the economic future of our country. But I think shifting that balance somewhat so that college faculty would be more generally valued for teaching, at least at the same level as research, would have more impact on the future of this nation than many of the other changes we could make. Now let me talk about underrepresented groups in STEM. And I'll start this by telling you about a meeting I had in my first year as president at MUD with about a half dozen African American students, which was about half of the population at MUD of the entire number of African American students. We're small, we have about 730 students altogether, undergraduate only, and the African American population is the least well represented in our community. Just to give you a difference, this year 52% of our incoming class was female. So we are now 42% female, up from 30% when I arrived 4 years ago. So with gender, we're actually doing pretty well, but African Americans have got a long way to go. And I was talking to them about trying to understand what it was like to be such a small minority at a college like ours. And for the first hour, this was over dinner together in the dining commons, and for the first hour, they really didn't open up. It was like, yes, everything's going great, it's a wonderful place. Now, I was having this dinner because a couple of students had told me that it was actually pretty miserable being African American at Mudd. And finally, one of the students said, President Klawe, why do you care? Why are you so big about this diversity thing? And I said, well, you know, I'm of an age, I'll be 60 next year, yay. I'm of an age when, you know, when I went to school, both in high school and then in college, everyone said to me constantly, why are you studying mathematics? Girls aren't good at mathematics. I was the best student in my class in almost every class I ever took. But they were still telling me, you don't belong because you're female. And I told them that, and all of a sudden they started talking. You know, it was just like, oh, she gets it. So, who are the underrepresented groups? Females are still really underrepresented in most areas of engineering. They've gone up, overall for engineering, they've gone up from being, you know, whatever, 1% or something, 30 years ago to now being about 20%. But they're it's very unbalanced. There are lots of females in undergraduate majors like chemical engineering, bioengineering, civil engineering. There are very few in areas like mechanical engineering, electrical engineering, computer engineering. Computer science is the weirdest story in STEM education as far as females go. In the early 80s, about 30% of the CS majors were female, and that has fallen to being down at about 12% in a couple of years ago if you look at doctoral granting institutions in the United States. And it's fallen all around the world. It's not just in America. And then physics is more like engineering. You know, there were hardly any women in physics 30, 40 years ago, and now there are about 20%. Now, I've been talking about undergraduate majors, but if we actually look at faculty, the situation is much worse. MIT celebrated a number of years ago when it got to 15% females at MIT. Caltech, I believe, has yet to reach that level. I'll just brag, Mudd is at 35% females in their faculty. African Americans, just almost, tiny numbers of African Americans in virtually every area of math, science, and engineering. Similarly for Latino, Latinas, and for Native Americans. Now let me talk about American culture. Well, I already told you this bit about, it is acceptable. People even brag about how bad they are at math. When I go to China or India and I talk about this, they just roll their eyes. They can't imagine. It would be like admitting that you couldn't read well. But the other thing that is really damaging for our culture is that we have this advice that we give to our students that says, do what you love, do what you're good at, and your life will be successful. Well, you know, the truth is that math is like sports. If you practice, you improve. There are some people who are really bad at sports, like me, but even I can learn to ride a skateboard or learn to juggle. It takes me probably 1,000 times as long as most of my students, but I can do it. And math is just like that. Some people will learn it more easily, other people will have to work harder. But if you put the effort into it, everybody will be successful. So, let's talk about how we change these situations. And I'm going to talk about just very quickly some examples of what can really turn things around. And I suspect that the other panelists will shed more light in some of these areas. So the first one, worrying about those elementary school teachers who always hated math. Now, every teacher I know wants to be a great teacher. I mean, our teachers work incredibly hard. They care about their students, and they want their students to learn. Reasoning Mind is a nonprofit based in Houston. It provides a web-based math curriculum, but it also provides support for teachers to learn that curriculum. And for a teacher to teach in a Reasoning Mind school, they have to sign up for 150 hours of training in their first year of teaching the curriculum. But they get paid. Not much, about $10 per hour, but they actually get paid to learn it. And it's had a huge impact because the teachers then become confident. They know the material. They're excited about it. The children really enjoy it. It has a lot of impact on the classes that are using it. Second one at middle school and high school is a program called Math for America, which is a collaboration in the Los Angeles area between USC, Harvey College, and the Claremont Graduate University. The idea behind Math for America, which was founded by Renaissance Technologies founder and mathematician Jim Simons in New York City, is let's get people who are really good at math and who have those other skills that would make them great high school teachers. Let's pay for them to get a master's in education at one of the top places. USC is certainly one of them, so CGU. Then let's give them mentoring and support and professional development in exchange for an additional stipend for the first 4 years in the classroom. It really works. We now have 40 of those teachers in the program right now in Math for America Los Angeles, and I'm very excited about it. All I'll say about Harvey College is every single faculty member there cares much more about educating our students than their own professional career. It doesn't have to, I mean, you can change institutions and really have faculty care about teaching at the college level. Underrepresented groups. Well, one of the things I really want from both the African American and the Latina communities is they care a lot about literacy. We have African American and Latina lawyers. Please start caring about math too. And I won't say much about females in CS other than at Harvey Mudd, we've gone from being 10% of our CS majors being female to 40% in just 4 years. That's pretty phenomenal. All we did was, one, we changed our introductory course, so we made it about teamwork and problem solving instead of about programming. And yes, of course, you learn programming to solve those problems. It's become the most popular course in our core from being the least popular. We took our female students to the Grace Hopper Celebration of Women Computing Conference, which will be in Portland next year. It just happened in Atlanta. If you haven't been, it is the most inspirational thing you can do for your females, whether they're going to be in major in CS or engineering or physics or any other area in science and engineering. And then finally, we gave both females and males the opportunity to do research on socially relevant problems between their first and their second year in college. And just doing those three things, none of them were particularly expensive, we changed from 10% female to 40% female. So, culture. The take-home message, if there's one thing I could convince you of, is that hard work and persistence eat talent and ability for lunch every day as far as math goes. I just cannot get that through enough, that if you really encourage your children, your students, yourself to believe that if you work hard at math and science, you will do well no matter who you are, it would totally change our culture and it would change the situation for STEM education. Thank you very much. My next responsibility is to introduce the other members of the panel. We're going to start with Susan Hackwood, who is the Executive Director of the California Council on Science and Technology. Susan? Our next panelist after Susan is Michael Escalante, who is the retired Superintendent of the Glendale Unified School District. And then finally, John Slaughter. He's the former president of the National Action Council for Minorities in Engineering. He's also the former president of Occidental College, and he's currently a professor of engineering and education at USC. And Susan, I'd love to turn over the mic to you.
Thank you, Maria. I'm an electrical engineer, so it's terrific to come to USC. I've been watching many of your programs over the years as a faculty member at UC Santa Barbara and then a dean of the College of Engineering at Riverside, and it's absolutely terrific to see the way that this campus has grown. I've been asked to come today to talk to you in my capacity as in the California Council on Science and Technology. California Council on Science and Technology is roughly the equivalent of the National Academies or the National Research Council for the state of California. We represent about 200 of the state's science and technology leadership, and we work primarily with the state government, often whether the state government really wants us or not, but certainly we work on science and science and technology policy that influences the state and has a direct impact on the citizens of California. The topic that I was asked to address is on education. We work on many things other than education. For example, right now I'm up to our eyeballs on smart meters, which you've probably been following up in Marin County. And we'll work on nuclear power and water systems and whatever we need to do. But we always get involved in education because it always boils down to who is making decisions and what's the background in order to be able to make those decisions, and inevitably there's a science and technology component to that. So the topic that I'm going to address is in education, and particularly related to the grand challenges, are we asking the right questions and are we solving the right problems? In what I'm going to talk about, I'm going to assume that you're an educationally savvy audience and that you already know the background of where we are in education in the country and in California. And you've read things like the new RAGs, the news rising above the gathering storm, which is rapidly approaching Category 5, the new National Academies report. And I assume you also know things like the PCAST report on STEM education. So I won't repeat things that are already in those publications. But I will try to talk about the perspectives that we have and relate a lot to what Maria has said and perhaps look to the future. So I was asked to look at the perspectives from a large state, and we certainly have all the problems. We may have some solutions. We actually have a budget that might be signed by the governor soon, right? But we certainly have all the problems. And I'd like to talk specifically about two potential solutions. One is on digitally designed education, and the other is opening the door to STEM at every level possible. California has traditionally, of course, been a place that has attracted the best and brightest from throughout the world. And personally, I migrated from England to the East Coast to California because it was a place where all the amazing new stuff happened. And in fact, when I was at Bell Laboratories and I would come up with an idea, I'd go to my boss and he'd say, "Pots or pans?" And it was he in those days. Pots or pans. So pots is plain old telephony system, and pans is pretty amazing new stuff. So I was asked whether my stuff was pretty amazing new stuff. And I saw that that's where California was in the world leadership. That's not necessarily the case now. And this view graph I borrowed from one of our council members who's at UC Irvine, and she poses that is California the sunset state? Is our innovation capacity decreasing? Because it depends extremely a great deal on the health of its higher education institutions and, of course, on its K through 12 system and the budget process that we have. We have a somewhat dysfunctional legislative process. So we took these ideas to our state legislator, and they came back, and this is to their credit, the bipartisan, bicameral request for us to look at what's California's innovation capacity. You don't have to read any of this, but the bottom line is that asking us to give them an idea as to where the state is going in its innovation capacity, and in particular look at things like the changing role of innovation, the rise of India and China, the rise of other states being more competitive, the re-rise of Europe, which I left and found out that it's doing pretty well on many things now. Maybe it's time to go back. Looking at all the factors that affect our innovation capacity, and there's no greater factor than education in this process. And the challenge for us to produce a workforce of the future that is going to meet the needs of the industries that we can grow is our Achilles heel. It's a limiting factor. So we know that we need a workforce that has all these skills, the bio-nano info. But we also know that because of the globalization of science and technology, that the multicultural disciplines are really important. Multi-language skills. You know, US is about the only country that I know of that doesn't have a very strong emphasis on people learning 2 and 3 languages. Also can operate in a world economy, capacity for innovation, all things like this. So we know that this is what the issue is. Let me just give you a couple of different data points that you may not be aware of, other than in addition to the RAGS report and things like that. The first is the history of state funding. USC and others are private schools, but this is what's happening with the CSU and the UC system. We reached a pivotal point a couple of years ago when we pay more into our state prison systems than we do in higher ed. Now, I don't think the two are related. It actually costs more to keep somebody incarcerated than it does in a baccalaureate program, and I don't think you can switch them either. But this is a true statement. We put more attention onto our prison systems than we have on higher ed. Another factor that is influencing us is last year, for the first time, the California State University system was eclipsed in the number of baccalaureates enrolled by the University of Phoenix. Now, you've seen in the news that there's questions about the for-profit institutions and the efficacy and how good they are and what you get out of it and this, that, and the other. But the bottom line is that we are losing students from our state university systems to the for-profit institutions. And an interesting data point here is our California Community Colleges has been tracking transfer students. And transfer students often reflect the local community much more. So that's where you'll find a higher percentage of women and minorities. And a higher percentage of women minorities are going into the for-profit institutions. That's very interesting because it kind of shoots in the foot the notion that it's cost that is preventing people from going on to higher education, because they certainly cost a lot more than the public institutions. So that's a fact that is occurring. There's a drift towards the for-profit institutions because students have 24/7 access to training, and they also get work-related skills, workforce-related skills. These are data that our organization tracks. You don't have to look at all the details, just look at the bullet points down the right-hand side. This is the incredible shrinking pie chart, and it shows the number of students in 9th grade, which is at the top, then the number of students who are eligible for the UC and the CSU, the number of students who actually get into the CSU and UC system, the number of students who choose STEM disciplines, and the number of students who walk across the stage in a fair number of years, 4 or 5 years, with a degree in a STEM discipline. And the other group of bubbles down the right-hand side is a similar breakdown of the number of students that come through the community college route. 3 take-home messages for this: that only 4% of 9th graders actually graduate in science and engineering, which is very small. It's about national average, but considering we're a high-tech state, it's really bad. About 60% of students are lost as they go through, particularly the CSU system. And about 32% of students walk across the stage with a degree after transferring from a community college. So those are the data that we're dealing with. Here's another point, is Maria talked about how our teachers are trained to teach science. So this is a study that we did on the way we teach science in elementary school, and surprisingly, supervisors rate their teachers at teaching science better than the teachers rate themselves. That's what those data say. This shows that a new poll that parents in particular, think students need to know more science, and surprisingly, it's the African American and Latino communities who think more about this than other communities. So, we're teaching a new generation. What the new generation needs is mobile tech. They need a lot of the things that we've been talking about today and yesterday, in the ability to be able to have a 24/7 hour access. They need social networking. They want lifelong learning. And so the notion of a digitally designed education is what I'd like to focus on. How can we identify a different mechanism, not our current system, but a system of digitally designed education from the ground upwards? In other words, not adding on to our own system, but what would be the future of digitally designed education? And just some things that we know that students would like to have. Integrating technology into the classroom, but also designing a different kind of classroom. So you can read these as fast as I can. And I want to end on a couple of notes, a reflection on society. We've kind of got off track. I think we've kind of got off track in our perception of what engineering in particular is, and what science is, and how important it is to our society. And this kind of went back from the 60s, when science became bad, and engineering in particular came bad. And you remember the energy crisis of the 70s. That was actually when Alan Moore's comic book came out of The Watchmen. And the little blue figure up here is Dr. Manhattan, and he's sitting on Mars looking at a photograph of his girlfriend. And he's reflecting that technology has become so powerful, he can no longer interface, because he's an atomic figure, he can no longer interface with humanity. He's lost touch with humanity. And I think we're giving science, and particularly engineering, a bad rap. We talk so much about the environmental effects of our engineering and technology, but we don't reflect on this remarkable picture enough. This is the moonrise, the Earthrise from the moon. And we managed to put people on that moon. And so celebrating engineering and celebrating science is not done enough. We did this last spring in Sacramento, when we took over the IMAX Theatre, and we played the Hubble 3D, and we took 250 policymakers and their families from Sacramento to watch the movie. It was amazing. You've heard the build a story, tell a story. Well, this is a remarkable story. It's a remarkable story of the science, but it's also a remarkable human story of the engineering that went into being able to make this successful. And we got so many wows when people came out of that. It was really effective. And then the last point is that we have a new program to bridge science and technology and policymakers. This is our inaugural class of 10 science and technology PhD graduates, and you might recognize Catherine Moore on the front row, as she's a USC PhD graduate. These are doctors, there's a veterinarian, the engineers, the scientists, and we're placing them into legislative offices, and they have amazing stories to tell about bridging the chasm between policy and science and technology. Although, building that chasm is not new. We've actually been doing this for a long time through many cultures, and the notion of a scientist working with a decision maker is not unusual. And I think that Zachary Quinto and Chris Pine are now doing the same thing to a new generation. And so I'll end with, I think that these two aspects of improving the way that science and technology is taught and perceived in society is really important. One is through a digitally designed education, and the other is opening the door of STEM and widening the experiences of all of the public and of policymakers in STEM. Thank you.
Good afternoon.
It's nice to be here as a representative from K-12. It seems all too often, as a former superintendent for 14 years, I spend more time defending K-12 education because those that choose to evaluate K-12 education based on performance in LA Unified won't always find a positive result. Let me start with telling you a story of Glendale Unified School District's attempt, in fact, very successful attempt to build a STEM program in a closed middle school. And it's a tremendous story of success. In 1996, the district's 3 comprehensive high schools were very overcrowded. So rather than building a new school, we decided that a task force would be put together and we would build a program at a closed middle school site. The task force had a very specific vision of what they wanted to occur in that middle school. They wanted it to be based around science and technology. And these are the 3 statements that revolve around that particular vision. We didn't just go out and build a program without spending a great deal of time looking at research and what was going on to show us how we could do the best job in building a STEM program. So Will Daggett was part of that process. Doug Reeves was part of that process, along with various state reports such as Second to None, the SCANS report, Breaking the Ranks, and so forth. Here's an example of how Will Daggett specifically influenced our program. Rather than, and in fact it was mentioned earlier, the importance of physics. Physics, rather than being a capstone course, our program has students taking physics as part of the 9th grade. We also determined in restructuring the school that we needed to do is have more time for certain classes, so a block schedule was established, along with an enrichment program at the end of the day that allowed students to have office hours meeting with teachers. There were various partners that came to the table immediately and were quite excited about this program. So companies such as Compaq, Intel, Cisco, JPL, Disney, and on were very much interested in being partners as part of this program. We had to figure out how to do business differently in the K-12 system, so we had to work with business partners very differently than we traditionally had. We had to get parent involvement as part of the process. We had to figure out how we were going to market the program. Because remember, what we were trying to do is bring students from other schools in the district to lower the sizes of the other comprehensive high schools, so we had to build a very attractive program. Here's what the task force wanted students to come out at the other end looking like. They wanted to have creative, critical thinkers. They wanted them to be lifelong learners. They wanted them to have the ability to read, write, and communicate, and the ability to function in the real world and leave the school, interestingly, with a saleable skill. The teaching methodologies were very different as part of the planning process. So rather than having instructors who stood at a podium and gave nothing but direction through the 53-minute period, instruction was to be done thematically, and students were to be active participants as part of the instructional process. There was also going to be multiple opportunities for students to learn. So group projects and activities were a big part of the process. Online learning was a big part of the process. We did have some partnerships with some colleges, particularly Glendale Community College. And as part of a culminating project, every student was required to do a senior demonstration project. Shadowing was to be used, mentors, and service learning. Here were the 4 strands that were the focus for our curriculum: science and engineering, technology science, technology application, and digital arts. Within those strands, they were further broken down into themes to include engineering, science, animation, cinematography, and so forth. And it was to be a fully integrated career technical program. All too often, our regional occupational programs are taken by students after school, and the programs are somewhat disassociated with the normal program that students take during the day. So classes would be available during the day, they'd be at locations so they're easily accessible, and that we would have opportunities for industry-based professionals to be part of that program as well. Here's an example of a Saturday project, a group of our students that were working on the robot. Interestingly, this picture was taken on a Saturday because our students normally wear khaki pants as part of a uniform and a collared shirt. And also interestingly, it shows you how difficult the process of trying to get teachers credentialed. We had to have the teacher for this program, who was a JPL scientist, credentialed as a PE teacher. Partnerships, yeah, we had partnerships. Here's our robotics partnership with JPL. Our senior projects are reviewed by members of the community that are trained as part of the process. We have environmental science and very much involved in marine science and animation with Disney as part of those partnerships. Here's a simple activity done by a student. The student was asked to do what they thought was just a demonstration of a very difficult math factoring problem. But really, they learned way more than that. They learned about page layout and design and writing, along with their math skills. Here's our underwater operations class that was out looking at areas that were protected and unprotected areas and trying to determine what was the density of various plant life and animal life in a specific area of the ocean. This happens to be the robot that the students use as part of the project. And in fact, the interesting story is it's a partnership with the Ventura County Sheriff's Department. They use this same robot as part of a process to recover bodies. And actually, the students have helped them in the past determine the best procedures and grid process as part of that search. This is a writing exercise that was done by students. You would have thought in a normal classroom it may have been done just with pencil and paper. They thought they were doing page layout and photography and learning how to use Photoshop. But what they learned was what we refer to as the head fake, is they learn much more than just what they think on the surface. What they learn actually is to write. They learn how to package their work in a professional manner. And they also learn technical skills that reflect their own life experiences. This was a poster that students in an AP English class were doing. So you can see the use of technology even in a traditional English class. This is artwork that was done, masks that were built by students, but the mask wasn't taken alone as a project. In turn, it was integrated with writing and digital arts, so students produced actual work that they could display in a poster fashion throughout the campus. Another example of the same art. In fact, frequently we're starting to think that we're not just a STEM school, we really are a STEAM school, and we incorporate the arts as part of the process. Let me go back. Well, I should have gone back to that one. This was actually a PE class, and students were asked to build a portfolio around improving their jump shot. So what they thought they were doing may have been revolving around PE, but they were doing much more than that. They were using Excel, they were doing literacy activities, and they were also doing digital photography. Here was a student doing his senior assignment around nutrition. Another senior project that was actually building an automobile, so our learning is very much project-based. Engineering, this happens to be our catfish project, and this student built, along with a group of students, built the catfish robot. There's the telemetry that operates it, and they actually operated in competition. Also below there is a bridge building project that was part of our engineering class. This happens to be the CAD drawing of the robot that was, undersea robot, the catfish, that was built by students. This student, in fact, Dr. Klawe, you may recognize this particular student up here. She happens to be one of your students at Harvey Mudd, and she's actually using a device to sight in a GPS point as part of a data collection project this group of students were doing in the LA Harbor area. And here she was actually doing a presentation for a group of divers, because what they were doing is measuring the content of heavy metals in the water. And here is the LA River as it empties into the harbor area, and here are all their samplings, and their computer allows them to determine which are the areas that are the most contaminated. This happened to be an area that was the Montrose chemical plant at one time, and so this information was provided to divers so they could be more careful in the future. Let's see. Here's your student right here working with our divers. Actually, the student's here, and here's the diver. Kids don't do the actual diving. We work with Cisco for computer networking, a big part of our program. The neat part about that is kids actually work for the district and work from school to school and are actually paid employees of the district to provide computer network services. What's the future? This is pretty exciting. This is a project that the students are working on. This is a device that will be attached to a rocket that will actually be lifted up into space, and this orbiting cube will be ejected, and students will be building equipment for the cube, determine various levels of heat and various areas that they choose to measure. Here's the CubeSat, and we're in the first year of this project. In fact, we're looking for a partner. Here is the simulation device that's actually used in the classroom. Here's the interesting part. People frequently get confused over the fact, well, if we spend so much time working on STEM areas, how will our students do with the traditional measures that we're asked? This is the California high school exit exam. These green bars, the first one is for all students at the school. The second bar is for the English language learners at the school. And you can see from year in to year out, our students are almost all 100% proficient, 100% successful on the high school exit exam. These are the statewide averages, so you can see where we measure next to the state. Here's another interesting factor. California has a measuring device that we refer to as the Academic Performance Index. You can see the number of our students that are low socioeconomic has continued to grow. So back in 2000, there was a difference between all of the students which are in red and the yellow, which are the low socioeconomic students. What has happened over a period of time? This score is a score between 200 and 1,000, with any school over 800 being considered highly successful. What's happened as we've gone through the years? There's virtually no difference between the low socioeconomic kids and the kids that... Here are some of our awards. I won't go through those. And here are some of our grants. And lastly, I want to make sure that I introduce really the king of Clark Magnet High School. He's not just the principal. That's Mr. Doug Dahl, who's sitting down here in the front, so I'm sure some of you may want to talk to him. Thank you.
Good job. Years ago, I attended a symposium at the University of Notre Dame that Walter Cronkite moderated. At the end of the event, he closed with these words: "Many things were said, and many things were not said, and that's the way it is." Cronkite's words would be an appropriate description of the many conferences, position papers, op-ed pieces, and reports which over the past 5 years have addressed the growing threats to America's capacity for innovation and productivity, our crumbling infrastructure, our underperforming public school systems, the declining interest of our young people for science and engineering, the trends toward offshoring and outsourcing, and the many related issues that have captured the attention of the national academies, the Council on Competitiveness, the Congress, and the President, to mention a few. Many recommendations have been put forth, almost all of them meritorious and deserving of serious consideration, if not adoption. As Walter Cronkite remarked, many things were said. But something has not been said. If it has been said at all, it has seemed as more of an afterthought or a tangential observation rather than a matter for serious consideration. And that matter is the continued underrepresentation of women and minorities in science and engineering. A wise person once said, "The future is not hard to predict. The present is already pregnant with it." I'm referring to the dramatic demographic shifts that are taking place across the country and the irreversible, inexorable growth of minorities and immigrants in our population. We have known for a long time that our colleges and national workforce are seeing a persistent trend of a declining presence of white males, the subpopulation that constitutes the vast majority of scientists and engineers in this country, due largely to an increase in the number of women and minorities. The University of Texas just announced that white students, for the first time in the history of that institution, are outnumbered by students of color in this year's entering class. I don't believe that the scientific and technical professions have seriously heeded the transition that is underway and prepared for it. The days when we could count on an adequate number of foreign nationals to come to the United States to study and remain here to help fulfill our need for highly qualified science and technology professionals have ended. And it is clear, just by visiting the campus of any major research university in the United States, that the number of American students enrolled in engineering is inadequate to meet the needs of today and tomorrow if we are to innovate and compete in the global marketplace of technology, ideas, and products. I don't believe we can contribute fully to addressing the grand challenges unless we provide all our young people, white, black, brown, American Indian, Alaska Natives, Pacific Islanders, rich, poor, girls and boys, with the opportunity and preparation to enter and succeed in studying the STEM disciplines. Other countries, not just China and India, are moving faster than we are. In a recent article, Tom Friedman wrote, "They are catching us because they now have free markets like we do, education like we do, access to capital and technology like we do, but most importantly, a willingness to postpone gratification, invest for the future, work harder than the next guy, and hold their kids to the highest expectations." We must fix our urban schools. We've studied the problems long enough. We must also commit ourselves to eradicating the remaining obstacles that impede women and minorities from considering, entering, and succeeding in STEM. Considerable progress has been made since I graduated in a class that had one woman and one African American. Today, women have made significant strides in increasing their presence in engineering, and less improvement has occurred for underrepresented minorities. Historically, black colleges and universities, Hispanic-serving institutions, and tribal colleges have proven that their graduates can compete effectively upon completion of their studies. HBCUs, for example, graduate fully 1/3 of all African American students who receive baccalaureate degrees in engineering, and are the primary source for those African Americans who go on to achieve success in graduate education in America's most highly regarded research universities. Students at minority-focused institutions experience an affirming environment in which success is encouraged, supported, and expected. They are much more likely to be surrounded by role models and mentors than those minority students in predominantly white colleges and universities. Our major research universities should study and emulate the best practices of HBCUs, HSIs, and tribal colleges in order to improve upon their own records of success with the growing population of potential students. We must ask ourselves why we cannot produce adequate numbers of people with the highly developed analytic and quantitative skills necessary for the technology-intensive jobs that must be filled. Part of the reason is the poor preparation and the lack of encouragement many young people encounter in too many of our public schools. Teachers without the appropriate college major or minor are teaching 1/4 of all students in mathematics and half of all students in physical science at grades 7 through 12. And most of them are teaching in schools with the largest numbers of poor and minority students. Often even well-meaning teachers and counselors do not know enough about engineering and therefore are unable to guide students in any meaningful way toward such a career. Our engineering education programs must share some of the responsibility. Many students in the first and second years of engineering study have left or have contemplated leaving the study of engineering because they have not received a sense of meaningfulness in their education or have not been led to an understanding of how engineering will help them make a contribution to society. The drudgery of the early courses in mathematics and science mask the potential of enjoyment and satisfaction they hope to receive from their career choice. Engineering education programs must help graduates understand that a high level of excellence is demanded of them if they and America are to compete successfully in the global environment in which we must operate. Outsourcing and offshoring are here to stay. While we may not be able to compete on the basis of costs, we must be able to compete on the basis of brains and ambition. Practicing engineers also must share some of the blame for not conveying to young people the excitement, satisfaction, and rewards to be found in engineering, and by not providing sufficient outreach to encourage and inspire more of them to prepare for the opportunity to become engineers. Based upon the foregoing, I have 3 recommendations that I would like to put forth for consideration. 1, the math and science curricula at the secondary and undergraduate levels must be overhauled. We must focus much more on problem solving and making connections to the real world in the teaching of math and science. Drawing examples from the grand challenges would provide students a sense of meaningfulness in their studies and inspire them to further pursue science or engineering as a career. 2, scientists and engineers must become active participants in discussions about the place of science and technology in public policy and in ensuring a sound economic future for the country. They must be held accountable for communicating with the public, especially young people, in order to inform, encourage, and inspire greater interest and participation in the STEM disciplines. Engineers in particular should avoid the appearance of being engaged in a stealth profession and instead do more to educate the public about engineering, its activities, achievements, and the rewarding careers that it offers. And finally, the science and engineering professionals and professions must develop a much more sincere commitment to diversity. They must understand the changing demographics underway in America and the potential negative consequences to our capacity for innovation and productivity, but not addressing them. They must recognize and make clear the importance and need for a national focus on erasing the underparticipation of women and minorities in science and engineering. We need to tell our story clearly and powerfully. Innovation is the economic driver of the 21st century, and diversity drives innovation. Our future depends upon our understanding of these truths and our commitment to abide by them. Thank you very much.
Thank you all panelists. A lot of questions for you, Michael, about your program and about scalability. And can you hear me okay? It's hard to hear sometimes out here. Is the program scalable? And would it work in a district that was disadvantaged in ways where JPL is in their backyard? Imagine this, in other words, as a national kind of thing. How would it work?
It could work any place. Right now, realize that it is not a gifted magnet program. It is a program that students come to the school based on a lottery. All you need is a C grade and in math and science in order to qualify at the middle school to go on to this program. It's about 1,100 students, and it's had great success for a number of years now.
But if you don't have the technical expertise to draw upon, if you're in the middle of Montana or whatever,
there's
not
always
to cast any aspersions.
There are various smaller.
Let's bring up the house lights too, by the way.
Yeah, there are various smaller companies that could provide us with the same kind of trained engineers.
So, how many other school districts are doing the same thing? Are you one off? Are you one off?
I'm only in charge of one.
That's all. All right. Overall question for the panel: to what extent do you feel that the grand challenges are a tool for inspiring kids on STEM? Is that a good way to look at it? Start down the line on that.
Yeah, I think most people, most young people today, they actually want to make a difference in the world. We have a new generation of enthusiasm and passion about solving major challenges. And so I think the way of combining the fact that our world is facing really significant issues with respect to the environment, disease, education, poverty, etc., and combining that with, the reality is every single one of those needs engineering, needs science, needs technology to be able to solve them. So I think it's a great approach.
Can we build the kind of excitement that would inspire kids at the K through 12 level
Absolutely.
through this? Is this like having a moonshot?
I think so. Of course, I'm a sucker for science and engineering. So, but my sense is that when I go and talk to children about the state the world is in, and talk to them about what you would need to know in order to make a difference, that's highly motivating.
What are your thoughts on the linking STEM and the grand challenges?
I think the most important thing in linking STEM and the grand challenges is the communication, is getting the word out as to what the grand challenges are. And the former grand challenges were great. I'm sure there'll be another set that will come up as a consequence of these meetings. But conveying that, getting that message across.
14's not enough for you, huh? You want to do more, huh?
14 is fine. And I don't mean to say it doesn't matter what they are. It does matter what they are. But it's even more important to get that message across and to get people to understand it. If you ask most people, what do you think about the National Academy of Engineering Grand Challenges? They go, oh.
Yeah.
So, and that's the issue. How is the Academy and associated organizations going to get those messages across? I mentioned the Hubble telescope. That was really cool. That was an aha moment where you saw that we had policymakers at that time, got it, really understood, made the connection with science and made the connection with engineering. I wish we had more of those things.
Need more Hubbles. Okay. What do you think? How can we make the Grand Challenges live in classrooms?
Well, we believe that as part of that program at Clark Magnet that we truly expose students to all the aspects of the Grand Challenge. So we will leverage every kind of opportunity we have to use those in our regular program. Unfortunately, many of the students who come to the program don't really even realize that they're entering a program that really focuses around technology and engineering and the sciences. Over a period of time, all of a sudden the light goes on and they realize what a wonderful opportunity is for them.
So you got to sneak them into the tent a little bit.
It's the head fake, we call it.
Don't tell them it's science
we
or
don't
technology, right? How about you? What do you think about?
Miles, I think we tend to underestimate young people and what it is that they can contribute. There's no question in my mind that the Grand Challenges would be a wonderful vehicle for getting young people excited about science and engineering, and it's probably gives life to the expression that a young child will lead them.
And we will take questions from the audience if you have any. I'm looking for them. Oh, we have somebody over there. I'll tell you what, I'm going to ask a question while we get the microphone to you, and this one comes from Juliana. All areas of education seem to have big issues, she says in her tweet. Is there any one area that we should focus on first?
Math.
Just math.
I mean, focus on first.
You're kind of biased toward math, though, right?
Of course I'm biased.
Yeah.
I'm a mathematician. I'm married to a mathematician. I have a son who's a mathematician. But, I mean, the reason I say math, as far as STEM education goes, you can't do science or engineering without strong foundations in math. And if we don't get math fixed, you don't succeed in physics or biology or chemistry or any area of engineering. So that's the one I would get right first.
Any other thoughts? What would be first on your list?
Teachers.
Teachers?
Teachers are the critical factor, and it's the most clear method of knowing when a kid's going to be successful is knowing that you've got a really good teacher there. And by teacher, a human teacher is really good, but it could also be a digital teacher now. It could also be an avatar. It could be some other way. But an inspirational, keep focused, individualized, inspirational, on-target teacher.
What's your assessment of the teacher population in general when you start focusing on science and math? Do we need to upgrade?
Definitely. One of the studies I quoted was how much do elementary school teachers know about teaching science in particular and math. And it's precious little, because by and large they've chosen to go into that profession because they didn't like science and math in the first place. So they wanted to be general subject credentialed teachers. So getting them over
So the science and math teachers don't like science and math? Is that what you're saying?
No, I'm saying elementary school teachers
right.
who do a general education are not taught science and math, and they've generally chosen to go into elementary school education because they don't like science and math. So, and that's where you turn on.
Well, that's
and
a
turn
big problem, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
All right.
I think that was mentioned earlier, that people tend to gravitate what they're good at.
Right.
And elementary teachers, for the most part, a greater portion of them tend to be better in literacy. So they spend more time in literacy, and yes, we need to do more work to make sure that they're as effective in math and science.
You gravitate to what you're good at, but you also tend to repel what you think you're going to be bad at, and that goes back to what happens to you on the plane. I was always bad at math, and I think what happens now is that's been baked into a few generations. So when the young kid comes home and says, gee, Mom and Dad, I'm having a hard time with math, they say, oh, well, that's okay, I was bad at math too, and this kind of perpetuates, doesn't it?
It absolutely perpetuates, and let me just mention a program that Rose-Hulman Institute of Technology pioneered called Homework Hotline for exactly that reason. So 5 days a week on 7 to 10 p.m. East Coast time, you can call, I believe it's 1-800-ASK-ROSE, and you will get a student who will answer questions between grade 6 and 12 in math and science exactly to have that kind of thing. And they were nice enough to let us join them. So we now answer at MUD questions from 7 to 10 p.m. Pacific time from students.
Yeah. You should get on
all across the
iChat.
country.
That's where all the kids are these days, you know?
Absolutely.
John, your thought. What's number one on your list of things to do when you look at this big problem of education?
I agree with the comments of my colleagues, but I think we need to make education a much more seamless process, where the universities have a much closer connection to the K through 12 schools. I think that the fact that there seems to be a disjunction between the elementary and secondary schools as well as the universities creates a huge problem, and universities have tended not to play as strong a role as they must, in my opinion, to help address the critical problems of the...
We kind of toss students over the wall, don't we? There's really not a lot of connection. It would be helpful if there was more give and take, wouldn't there?
Well, the one thing universities can't do is pretend they have all the answers.
They do that all the time. What are you talking about?
That's the problem.
There's a question down here. Go ahead.
Yes, hi. I'm Joe Kokoza. I'm here at USC, and I'm the Director of Outreach for the Engineering Research Center that Mark Humayun, one of the panelists yesterday, is the director. And we have a very similar program to what you have in Glendale. And what I'd like to just share with you is the importance of partnership, and this is what Dr. Slaughter was just talking about. USC has been very supportive of working in local schools, including Bravo Medical Magnet. And like your school, it is a medical magnet, but it's by lottery. These are not highly gifted students. And one way of including the grand challenges is to literally immerse the students into the labs that are doing this. So I have 5 of my students from this program at Bravo here today and yesterday listening to this. And they're actually placed in engineering labs where they spend the entire year working on projects under the mentorship of graduate students and postdocs. And they learn much more than the engineering, which is important, but they see the relevancy of what they're doing. They learn time management skills. They learn how to communicate because it's built into the course. The big problem, and last night, Edutopia has recognized the school for a school that works, and last night I was a host on a webinar, and one of the questions came up, and it came up today on the tweet, is what about scalability? How do we take these kinds of models that are highly successful? Our students, I have no doubt, will be going, a vast majority of them will be going into engineering, and they're underrepresented minority students and they're women. And you can talk to the students yourself. I mean, the students are here. But as far as scalability, maybe we don't always have to think that we have the panacea, that we have this close relationship with Dean Yortzos and his support here at USC and the School of Medicine, because we leverage what we have in our own backyard. And instead of thinking, can we translate everything that we do at our center across the nation to Montana, the answer is, in theory, yes, because you can look in your backyard and you can model your pathway in your own geographical area. But also, those programs that are showing success and have the same kind of resources with universities, partnerships, or partnering with an industry, I think that's very important. So looking for partners outside of the K through 12, working together, I think, is really the way to go. And we cannot expect just the K through 12 schools to solve these problems, but through partnerships, I think it can be solved.
All right. Anybody want to elaborate on that point?
I have a question back to the person who's just posed that. What's the mechanism in USC for using the fact that faculty are doing this as part of the promotion and tenure?
That's a problem. But most of the professors that are taking the students, and we have maybe 30 different professors taking students, most of them are young.
Right.
And what it is that it is becoming more important for, I don't know, for tenure, perhaps for tenure, but for getting grants. to show that you are doing outreach at the teacher level, at the student level through K through 12. So many of the people that I know who will participate are the younger faculty.
Absolutely.
And here's sort of a related tweet. Natasha asks, what is the responsibility of current engineering students? We've got a few of them in the audience. What do you think about that?
What was it?
What is the responsibility of current engineering students in this regard? What should they be doing to
I think
assist?
the problem is not the engineering students. I think the engineering students are terrific.
So they have no responsibility?
No. It's a question of how they're going to be, how are they able to do this? You shouldn't rely on their altruism. It should be part of their education to be involved in these kinds of programs, so it's rewarded, so that it gives them the opportunity to do so. Open the door so they can do so. I've no doubt the engineering students will, I know the engineering students love this kind of stuff, so they go into it.
Yeah, I'd like to agree with Susan very strongly on that. My experience with engineering students is they are really interested in working with high school and elementary and middle school students and really conveying their passion for what they're learning. The problem is that at most universities, I suspect that USC is the same, engineering students take a heavier course load than virtually any other undergraduate major. And so you have to make it easy for them. So you can make it easy in a number of ways. You can have service learning in courses, and that's a great way to get them out in the schools. We certainly do a lot of that. But you have to make it easy for the faculty to connect with the schools as well. And that's why it's so exciting to have a formal group of staff to support engineering outreach. And, you know, one of the things I think that the National Science Foundation has realized is that you have to use some of your funding to actually support the students in getting out there. So I think my experience has been not that you have to twist arms to get kids to go out into the school. They love doing it, but you have to facilitate it.
Question in the back.
Yeah, hello. It's not really a specific question, just have to put some comments out there. I spent most of my life in academic institutions. I went to a very good private school in Athens, Greece. Then I went to the University of Cambridge, top school in the world, probably for
another
undergrad.
Greek? Jeez.
Yes.
What's going on here? You guys are taking over. What are you going to build the Parthenon over there or something?
And I'm here finishing my PhD in molecular biology. And my country, Greece, was recently occupied by the International Monetary Fund. And yeah, so I spent...
Better engineering than finance for the Greeks, I think, huh?
So my point is I spent 15 years of my life in top academic institutions, and I never got to think about political questions. So, you know, for example, in this country, we spent, the federal government spends $800 billion on the defense industry at the same time where there's 40 million people living on food stamps. You know, in India and China, we are having them as, you know, role models, and they're sending people to the moon when people are hungry in their countries. You know, I'm just asking these questions, and the final question is it okay for kids not to be encouraged to ask this kind of question?
Go ahead.
Well, at Harvey Mudd, all of our majors are in STEM disciplines, but 30% of the courses they take are in humanities and social sciences and the arts. And the reason we want them to do that is because we want them to ask exactly that question. So part of our mission is to prepare engineers and scientists who understand the context of their work in society. And I think the question that you're asking is one that every student should be encouraged to ask. What are the priorities? What should we spend money on? What are the most important problems to work on in science and engineering? Is it more important to get a Nobel Prize, or is it more important to eradicate malaria?
I just have to comment on that. As a California educator who grew up in California, when I graduated from high school, California was #1 in expenditure per student back in the late 60s. Now California is number 46th or 48th out of the 50 states in expenditure per student in K-12 education, and it is absolutely an embarrassment. So how can you build a wonderful infrastructure? You know, as a friend of mine always says, is in K-12 we're constantly being asked to build bricks without straw.
Boy, that's a horrifying statistic you just shared with us. Go ahead.
The gentleman from Athens, can I mention that from what I know of the European education system of which I'm a product, Europe does a much, much, much better job in the social sciences, the economic context, philosophy, and the general liberal arts in high school. Then we don't touch it. We do very, very little. So the students come through knowing more. I think our students, and it's not their fault by any means, do not have an opportunity to do this except if they're in special opportunities like Maria's school to be able to do that. And that's our fault. That's our problem, and it reflects back to K through 12.
Question in the front here.
Yes, it's more of a follow-up to what Dr. Kokosa was saying. So I'm a tenured faculty member.
Can you hold the mic a little closer so we can hear it?
Yes, so I'm a tenured faculty member here at USC, and I was tenured at Cornell before coming here. And I don't think it's a problem to tenure, to be involved in these issues. I know it's a problem to get a large number of faculty to get involved in this. We work together, and we've fought this battle for a while here. I think that there will always be a subset of faculty who sort of see it as part of their role as being involved with these outreach tasks. And we do it because we want to do it. But I don't think it in any way counts against us. I don't think it in any way puts us at risk of not doing anything. It's just something that we do in addition. And, we're also evaluated in terms of service. And this is seen as an important part of service. So I don't think it's difficult to find a large number of faculty, but I think there are always enough faculty out there.
I guess the question is, should it be a requirement of the job?
Yeah, I'd like to take on that one because I don't think there are enough faculty. I think you're exactly right that there's always a number of faculty who do it, and they do it from their own passion. And it counts towards service, it doesn't count towards much of anything else. And I remember arriving as president at MUD, and one of our faculty who just gotten tenure said, I want to know whether you value outreach to the schools, because pre-tenure I was involved in doing a bunch of stuff with the Pomona School District, and I was told by my more senior colleagues that I shouldn't do it, that I should focus on things more on the MUD students, teaching, and on research. And one of the things I'm really proud about is that we have changed that culture a lot. And in particular, we just tenured a math faculty member whose primary scholarly interest is professional development for K-12 teachers. And when he took his sabbatical after getting tenure, he went to teach. He got qualified to teach high school math in California and spent his sabbatical at Helen Bernstein High School here in LA US Unified School District because he felt that if he didn't have the experience of actually teaching in a highly challenged school, he wouldn't understand how to provide the professional development to teachers. And I mean, we are an unusual place, but I really do believe that colleges and universities need to shift their priorities. Not 100%, but let's say 5%.
Even 5% would make a difference?
It would make a huge difference.
Yeah. Question down the front row here.
Thanks, Miles. As a longtime high school principal, I've always had the experience that you don't have a great band because you have great musicians. You have a great band because you have a great band director. And the frustration that we have in the public schools is in credentialing. I had 2 members of the JPL Mars rover team teaching my robotics team at my school. And it was so difficult for them to get credentialed that they finally gave up. They would be interviewed by Dan Rather on Friday night and be with our kids Saturday morning. And finally, they couldn't get credentialed because of all the methods classes and all the things that they had to do. One of the things that needs to be done is to work with policymakers to change the way credentialing in engineering programs, in programs where technology, you have to have 5 years of experience within the last 5 years. There's technologies that we should be teaching that haven't existed for 5 years. And so we really need to look at how experts are translated into a classroom and how we can make that work. Thank you.
Juliana has a related question on a tweet. If we focus on teachers, at what point do we focus on them? Existing teachers, new teachers, future teachers, or all the above?
Yes. The answer is yes, all of the above.
All of the above.
The credentialing issue that you just raised is a very serious issue in California, that we can't open the door to a wider group of people who are capable, able, and willing to go into the classroom and do marvelous things. Recruiting teachers and recruiting teachers from who have not just decided to go into teaching because that's all they can think of, but really good brains to go into teaching. That's what we've done for hundreds of years in Western civilization. Training them in a way that is going to make them effective in the classroom, and then retaining them afterwards, making them feel part of the profession, giving them equal status with the JPL scientists that they go in to work with, giving them the not only the financial support, but the peer support and the recognition and dignity of being a teacher.
Did I lose one of my microphone people? Where did she go? Where's the other one? Is she here? Oh, over there. Good. Okay, let's do this and then this, okay? Sorry about that. And then we're going to try to work our way back around here. A lot of questions. Not surprising. Go ahead.
Well, the short part of the question is how? I have an 8-year-old son, and a group of us parents wanted to start a similar program in our elementary school. I got my doctorate here. I was going to help enhance STEM education. We had musician, artist, even sports, that we were trying to enhance the education our children get. Not that it's that bad. I mean, the API scores that school got was in the 950s in the last testing round. But when we tried to initiate these kinds of programs, short answer, the union said, you set foot on that property, we're going to close the school. How do we make this happen in reality?
That's a tough one.
That's a tough one.
Well, I think that you start by working with the unions. So the Math for America program that I briefly mentioned, we went and, before we launched it in Los Angeles, we went and we talked with the UTLA union, because we realized that if we don't do things in partnership with the unions, it's not going to succeed. So I think one has to, be realistic about working with unions. I'm happy to say that we have a vice president from UTLA on our steering committee, and we've had tremendous support from them. So
are they a willing partner generally?
What's that?
Are the unions a willing partner generally?
Absolutely, in this case. But I mean, we went and we had a number of our faculty go and talk with them. We hired our executive director, who'd actually, worked with the unions for a significant amount of time. And the reason I knew to do this was in New York City, they started by getting Randy Weingarten, who was at that point president of the New York City Teachers Union, engaged. She's now the president of the major teachers union across the nation. But if you have the conversation with them first, you have a good sense of what's going to work and what's not going to work. And, unions are here, they're in California, they're powerful, they're a group that we have to respect and partner with.
Question over here.
Yeah, my name is Roy Hochstead. I actually grew up in Glendale, went through the Glendale Education School District. And my wife is an elementary school teacher. I'm an engineer by profession. And, going back to what we were talking about earlier, that most elementary school teachers are not interested in math and science, and that's one of the reasons why they are, elementary school teachers, or they go into that profession. I think it's a real issue, because I think all the STEM interests and how you become an engineer is fortified at those early years. And if we can't fix that problem in elementary, all the other things that we're talking about at this conference are really irrelevant, because the demand from the people that would go into those fields isn't going to be there. I personally feel I became an engineer despite my environment at school and things like that, because a lot of the teachers I had weren't interested in math and science, and nor did they explain to me the algebra I was learning or the mathematics I was learning, how it would benefit or the importance of it and relate it. So how is it, I just want you to comment on how do we fix the teachers at the elementary school level? Is that ways we incentivize for people that are good at math and science to go into those professions? Is it the way we construct the curriculum? Is it the way we handle the bureaucracy that allows that environment to continue to proliferate? I mean, what is it? My wife's friends, none of them like math or science. They all like reading and reading comprehension, and that's their focus. And I see that across the board at the elementary school levels. And it's good to have these programs that are these one-offs, but we need consistency amongst the entire nation, and I just don't see that happening.
Go ahead.
So I think there's lots of things that we can do, and probably no single bullet, but I completely agree with you, we have to address it. So number one, in our education schools, we can really emphasize developing confidence in mathematics for our elementary school teachers. And so, I mean, that's just something that we should make sure that every education school is doing, because until those teachers feel comfortable about their own understanding of mathematics, they're not going to embrace teaching it. The second one, I mentioned briefly Reasoning Mind. It's a wonderful program because it not only presents individualized math curriculum on the web, but it also provides, and in fact requires, significant training by the teachers. And what they see is the teachers who are teaching this, once they get the training, they start to love mathematics themselves because they develop confidence. The third one is for the teachers who are already out there. Well, programs like Reasoning Mind and Training help, but I think, I don't know of a teacher who wants to be a bad teacher. I don't know of a teacher who consciously wants to turn kids off math or engineering. I just think teachers need a lot more support. They need more, we need more people to really help them learn how to teach math effectively.
Go ahead.
I can give you a specific answer to your question and tie back to the grand challenges. I mentioned this report that we did last year, which is a quantitative and qualitative analysis of what elementary school teachers currently know about science and math and what they should know about science and math to be effective in the classroom. That's been taken up by 8 of the CSU system presidents to go back and look at their teacher ed program and to directly impact their teacher ed program. That we have some control of. And so there's a start of an answer to your question to change the teacher ed program so that it covers that. I will mention, though, that the majority of teachers in California in our major systems come out of the CSU, which is why I've just mentioned that. But there's another major factor, and that's National University, which actually produces more teachers' credentials than the CSU system. We have no control over that, and we have no control over what that they do. So that would be a next target. The challenge back to the national academies is to be part of this process. To use the academies have done an immense amount of work in this area, and the academies to be much more proactive and effective in taking their best methods and best practices to assist the schools who are trying to make these changes.
We are running a little bit over. We're going to take 2 more questions. We've got one here, and then we're going to go one down there, and then maybe if the panelists can kind of stay and answer a few questions afterward if they have time. I'm sure people would appreciate that. Go ahead in the back.
I noticed in terms of K-12 education, you place a lot of emphasis on teachers and educators, which is understandable because that's their job and that's the scope of your job. But do you think there should also be some emphasis placed on parents and maybe reaching out in terms of how parents interact with their kids and communicate the meaningfulness of science and math? Because in a lot of other countries, it's a lot of the parents' responsibility to communicate that, and it doesn't really seem like it's that way in America.
Yeah, let me briefly comment on that. Yes, absolutely, we would like to see parents be more supportive and more of a partner with schools as part of a three-pronged approach between the student, the teacher, and the parent. But here's something that I always worry about is sometimes we as educators use that as an excuse for not being effective with kids in the classroom. So we have to work through the process even if parents aren't.
So parents blame the teachers blame the parents.
Exactly.
Not a good place to be. Go.
I'll add a data point to that. Last year, Milken came out with a report called Mr. and Mrs. Asia. I don't know whether you've read it, but it looks at middle-class families in Asian countries and what they spend their disposable income on, what they do in their lives. And they spent, they being South Korea, Taiwan, and a bunch of the parts of China, parts of India, they spend more of their income on out-of-school education activities for their children than they did on their mortgage or their rent.
Wow. Final question here.
So, as a long-time LA Unified teacher and now a teacher educator with a faculty position both in engineering and education, I've seen these things sort of cycle through over the years, and I see this opportunity as not just grand challenges, but a grand opportunity. Currently we don't have an elementary ed teacher shortage in California, and frankly we don't have one in the nation. Secondary, particularly in science and math, we do. So it's a time to push forward. In addition to that, the National Science Foundation, the NIH, the Department of Education are funding research in K-12 ed in science and math. So we not only have a challenge and an opportunity as universities, but we have a responsibility as a university to partner with K-12, both at the pre-service level when teachers are in training, so that they get the content knowledge. Because one of the challenges for elementary teachers, as I think Mike mentioned earlier, is that they're taught to be generalists. They teach across the subject area, so they don't get the content knowledge that they need. So at the pre-service level, we really need to partner with the science, math, and engineering schools at our respective universities and make sure teachers have more content knowledge. But we can't say goodbye to them when they leave our doors, and we are famous for doing that as universities. We give them a little bit of help after they walk out the door, but not enough. Now there's lots of funding that in order to get that funding, you have to engage in some in-service training of teachers and link that to K-12 achievement data. And that is a grand opportunity that we have, supported by all of the federal research agencies, that we need to push forward with, because both at the elementary and secondary level, there's a lot of research that says that teachers' content knowledge is limited in science and math. And that causes them to be less efficacious about their teaching, less confident about their teaching. And what do they do in many cases, particularly at the elementary level? They end up avoiding it because they have more confidence, more content knowledge in English language arts, as a matter of fact. We can merge those because kids actually learn math better if it's applied through science. Kids actually learn reading better if it's applied through those kinds of content areas that are rigorous, like science and math. So here's our opportunity, here's our responsibility, and here's the funding behind it. And that's where we need to go with it.
All right. Thank you. I guess we got to end it there unless you have anything more to say. All right, I think we should ring the lunch bell then. Thank you very much, Maria Klawe, Susan Hackwood, Michael Escalante, John Slaughter. Stand up for your picture. Time for the picture. Get squeezed together there. Give them a round of applause. We're going to take a lunch break. We'll see you after lunch.